Good evening. I think we should be live now. Apologies for the delay. There was a tiny little change in how to set up the live stream, but we should be good to go now. All right. So this evening, the topic will be NFTs. It's a really hot topic this year. It's very interesting as well. There's a lot of really cool stuff going on with that. And so let me tell you, what are NFTs? Why is it a cool thing? What are they good for? And what might come out of that in the future? So let's start the presentation. And as per usual, after the presentation, feel free to ask any questions. Feel free to ask questions during as well in the chat, but I won't see the chat during, only after. So after that, the usual Q&A. And now let's go. All right. So NFTs. First and foremost, NFT is just short for non-fungible token. What a token is, I think most of you should be aware. If not, check out the other videos on our channel, check out my older webinars as well. And before we get into technical things, let's start with this thing here. This is a digital piece of art. And this piece of art is unique. And this has been sold for 6 Ethereum a while ago, might have been resold by then. This thing is called Tune In. It is by the artist Josie, and yes, as I said, it's sold for 6 Ethereum. Why am I showing this? Because this piece of art is also an NFT. So maybe some of you are already intrigued and think this is a rather cool thing. It looks nice in any case. This is another example for NFTs. And those of you who have been around the crypto block for a while and maybe even partaken in this, or at least are aware of the Ethereum thing for a few years, will know what this is. These are Cryptokitties, and they are historically important. On the topic of NFTs, a bit more on that later. But you see already, it's an interesting thing already, I think. So NFTs, as I said, the word token should be clear to most of you. The word fungible and non-fungible, maybe not so much. So let's start with that. A more technical definition for fungible would be that a fungible item is able to replace or be replaced with another identical item. And a bit less technical, and a fungible item can be exchanged without making a difference. And what does non-fungible mean? Big surprise. Non-fungible simply means that it's not fungible. So let's get into a few examples of fungible and non-fungible items out of the real world so that, that this makes a bit more sense to you. Fungible items, as I said, can be exchanged without making any difference. Money is the most common example. Everybody of you knows money. And if I have a $10 bill and you have a $10 bill and we exchange our $10 bills, nothing at all happened because $10 is $10. There's just no difference whatsoever, right? The same goes for cryptocurrencies. If I have a Bitcoin and you have a Bitcoin and I send my Bitcoin to you and then you send your Bitcoin to me, nothing happened because these Bitcoins are not different in any way. They're just the very same. And so we can exchange them without making any difference. Might as well not exchange them in the first place. Tokens are another example, not all kinds of tokens though. But for example, the ERC20 tokens or the same thing on the Ethereum, on the Binance chain would be a BEP2 token, and on the Binance Smart Chain would be a BEP20 token. Those can be exchanged without making any difference. Our Peak DeFi token is an example for that. Same again, if I send you one Peak token and you send me one Peak token of yours, then we might have as well not have done that because it just doesn't make any difference whatsoever. And other examples of the real world are gas, for example, water, metals. If I have a bar of gold or silver and you have a bar of gold or silver of the same weight, then we don't need to exchange them because gold is gold, silver is silver. That doesn't make any difference whatsoever. On the other hand, non-fungible items, and those are much more common actually in the real world than fungible items. Art is an example for a non-fungible item. If I have a piece of, I like to use Picasso as an example. If I have a Picasso and you have a different Picasso, or even a different painting from a different painter, we cannot just exchange these things without making a difference, because then we have different pictures if we exchange them. So it behaves differently than money does, for example. Event tickets, when they're personalized, might not be fungible. If there's your name on it and my name is on my ticket and we exchange, then we both won't get in, right? Because they're personalized, not fungible. The keys to a hotel or to my house, if you give me your house keys, I give you mine. It's a difference, of course. Domain names are a digital example of non-fungible items. Imagine if marketpeak.com could just exchange with google.com. Might be good for MarketPeak, might not be so good for Google. So again, they are just different. Pets, obviously, my dog is not your dog, and I like my dog more than I like your dog, although I like dogs in general, but that's beside the point here. And a really big thing in non-fungible digital items are rare or unique in-game assets. So when I found this number out, I was very surprised because it's a large number. So Fortnite, I think many people of you have heard of it, at least maybe some play it too, but it's a big thing. So you might be aware of it. Fortnite is just one computer game. And in just 1 year, and not even current, but 2018 already, so it's a while back, there was $2.4 billion was the market size of in-game items only in this one game, only in this 1 year. So this example shows what a huge market is in games alone with non-fungible items in the digital world. But yeah, of course, in the physical world, we have that as well. So let's get a bit technical, right? You are aware of the ERC20 token standard. That's just the base token standard. Our peak DeFi token is an ERC20 token. It's very old school. There's tens of thousands. Well, it's not really old school, but if you're in the crypto world for a while, then ERC20s are old school by now. Our peak DeFi token is one of those. They are fungible, and the ERC20 token standard that basically just maps an address to a balance. So if you look up an address in the contract of the token, the contract will give you back the balance of this address, and that is it. The ERC 721 is the base NFT standard, so the base standard for non-fungible tokens. And yeah, obviously they're non-fungible, hence the name. And they work a bit different from the mapping as well. And those tokens, the 721s, they map an ID to an address, which is a bit the other way around, right? We had with the 20s, we had the address maps to a balance, and here an ID maps to an address. So you can ask the ERC 721 token contract, who does, to stay just in the example of Cryptokitties, and why I use this example will get a bit more clear when we get to the history of NFTs. If I ask this token contract, who owns Kitty ID 37, then the contract will reply to me and say, this is owned by this address. So it's a different mapping as well. And yes, here are those Cryptokitties, all kinds of things with these. And every one of these kitties that you see on the screen here is an NFT. So they are unique. You can own them. So top left corner, we have Ellie. There's only one Ellie. And there's at least there's only one Ellie that looks like that and has the properties that this Ellie has. Oh, and they are actually not unique NFTs, so there's a few of those, but they're limited at least. And yeah, so these are represented by NFTs. And then there is and this is what was used actually on the last page. There is the ERC 1155. Do feel free to forget this, but I have to at least mention it, right? The thing that you might want to keep in mind for NFTs, the most important thing is the 721. But for completeness sake, let me just mention the 1155s as well. And here's a mistake in my slide. That's not the base NFT standard, but it's a bit of a different one. Those things are semi-fungible. And yeah, how do we mean semi-fungible? They imagine you can have cat food for these like digital virtual cat food for these digital virtual cats, but you can have different classes of cat food. So for example, you can have basic cat food and you can have premium cat food. And within these classes, that is fungible. So one basic cat food is the same as another basic cat food. And one premium cat food is the same as another premium cat food. But one basic cat food is not the same as one premium cat food. And so this is why we call it semi-fungible. Fungible within a class, but not fungible across classes. And how does the mapping work here? Here we can ask the token contract for a class and address, and then we get a balance back. So I can ask the 1155 contract, basic cat food on this address, what's the balance? And then the contract might reply, this address has 20 basic cat food. And again, it might reply, this address owns 3 premium cat food. So hence we call it semi-fungible. These things are still a bit rare. Use cases are so far for the semi-fungibles gamifications mostly, but that's growing anyway. And of course, developers do like to start out with gamey things because we have fun with that. But the thing you might want to keep in mind is the 721. So features of NFTs of the ERC 721 standard. The most important thing is that there is a standard. Standardization being super important, of course, as with all things. Let's look at ERC20 tokens, right? These work on all kinds of wallets, on all kinds of exchanges. Somebody creates a new ERC20 token and it just works in your wallet and in tons of other wallets as well. And why does it just work? Because it's a standard. Because technically they are super similar and completely compatible. And there were tokens on the Ethereum blockchain before the ERC20 token standard existed. The issue with that was that wouldn't work with your wallet. That wouldn't work with MetaMask or other wallets because it was a completely custom thing. So these super early tokens had to be transferred in a very, very technical way, often directly by hand on the command line, basically, signing a transaction, which is not a thing many people are able to do or should be able because it is more for developers, really. But then the ERC20 standard came around and all of a sudden, this was available to use for everybody, basically, for everyone who is able to use a wallet at all, that is. And yeah, standardization, why is it so important? Compatibility, interoperability, tradability, of course, resulting from that. And also because you have so many platforms available, just like that, you have liquidity, which is good. If only people can trade and use your token that are able to by hand sign their own transaction on the command line, you will have a very tiny group of people that are able to interact with that at all. So you won't have much liquidity. And of course, one of the standard blockchain or more generally generalized DAT features is the immutability. You still have that. So transactions can't be changed after the fact. That means if I sell you a super rare Cryptokitty and you give me Ethereum for that, then I can't just have your Ethereum and take the Cryptokitty back. Not possible. This is not specific to NFTs, of course. This is very general to blockchains and DATs, distributed ledger technologies in general. And on top of that, and there are really cool use cases and examples for that, programmability. because it's a standard, other people can just work on top of that, right? An example is if an event ticket is a token and is an NFT specifically, then this thing can have rules. So the artists selling these event tickets can, for example, say, you know what, I'm okay with you reselling this thing for a profit, but only up to this height of a profit. Or if you want to make a profit reselling my event tickets, then you will have to split the profit 50-50 with me. Or maybe you have to give half to a charity of the artist's choice. And because that is just programmed into the token contract itself, there's no way to get around this. And another example, a bit more gamified again, coming back to the Cryptokitties, is that, excuse me, that these things can breed, which is just added onto the base NFT 71 contract. And this means if you own a few Cryptokitties, then you might be able to create completely new ones, which you can also sell again, which has happened, by the way. So Cryptokitties was a big thing, a bit more on this later. And yeah, now let's get into the history of NFTs, because it is a bit interesting, and B, it's a pretty new thing. Even in the cryptocurrency space, it's a pretty new thing. The first thing that went roughly into this direction of not completely fungible were the colored coins on Bitcoin. That was just an experiment, and that was a way to color a Bitcoin or a coin on the Bitcoin blockchain, so that they are not identical, so that there is a difference between your coin and mine. These things are called colored coins. They're still around. I don't know if they're used much anymore. A few examples of those, or one at least I have here too. Rare puppies are digital collectibles. They are art, and those live on the Bitcoin blockchain as well. I think I have a picture of these. Yes, exactly here. So these are the so-called rare puppies, and each of those images that you see here on the second left, second from the top, you see amount issued 111, for example. So these things are very limited, they are rare, and they have an ID also, so you know exactly who owns this piece of art, and you can trade it, but you can't really copy it. Of course, you can't copy the image, but then again, you can copy a painting of Picasso as well, but nobody will care because it's just not the original Picasso. So it's irrelevant that you can copy that Picasso. It's just not the original, and it's provably so not the original. That's the point here. And there are games as well. So there was CryptoPunks. That was a game on Ethereum, on the Ethereum blockchain, that used NFT technology under the hood, but it was not yet on the ERC 721 token standard. So again, a super early example of something that wasn't really compatible with lots of things, and that was basically developers only, or very, very technically interested people that were willing to do the work to even interact with that at all, because that was difficult before standardization. So yes, this was 2017. And I personally find it interesting that this started out on Bitcoin, actually, because Bitcoin is quite a bit harder to program smart contracts for. It's not really made for this. So yeah, I think it's pretty cool, but it really exploded later than on Ethereum after CryptoPunks. In late 2017, then the ERC 721 token standard did come about, and maybe not quite the first, I'm not sure to be honest, but the first really big thing using this token standard was the Cryptokitties that I've mentioned a lot. And now you can understand why, because they are, historically speaking, super important. That doesn't mean they're super important today, but to get the history of NFTs, and also was an important event for the Ethereum network itself. For this, it is at least interesting to know. So as I said, this was ERC 721, a very early use case, and it had a huge hype, so much so that Cryptokitties basically broke Ethereum. And this meant, and those of you who have been using Ethereum at that time already will remember that, because how could you not? It made it close to impossible to transact anything on the Ethereum blockchain, because yeah, there was such a hype. So many people were dealing with their Cryptokitties and breeding them and trading them, that the average number of pending transactions on the Ethereum blockchain spiked from 1,500 to about 11,000, and the Ethereum network was just not able to handle that. So you had either insane transaction fees, even higher than today, at least in gas price, maybe not necessarily in dollar price, because the Ethereum price has gone up a lot, but the gas cost was even higher than it is today. And that was important for two reasons. It was important because it showed the limitations and scalability of Ethereum and of blockchains in general. So it showed how important it is to work on scalability, which is the biggest issue on blockchains and some other DLTs as well. The biggest technical issue, that is. Of course, there are non-technical issues that are much greater. But yeah, the biggest technical issue, and who is using Ethereum today knows this as well, right? A simple token transaction on Ethereum today costs about 8 to 18 or so dollars for just a token transfer, which is quite a lot already. Ethereum transfer itself on Ethereum is a few dollars also, which is, it's not cheap. And if you do a decentralized swap or something like that, then you can pay towards $100 for one swap, which can take a bit of fun out of it if you're trying to invest or trade smaller amounts. Then yeah, then it's just super, super expensive. And for this, for this reason, it was very interesting and relevant for Ethereum itself. And also it was, of course, very interesting and relevant for the ERC-721 and for the NFTs and the NFT idea in general, because everybody who was in crypto back then obviously noticed Ethereum being close to unusable for quite a while. And this made everybody that was in the scene back then aware about the topic of NFTs at all, and about the ERC-721 token standard specifically. So yeah, this is why I mentioned those so much. I'm not saying we should deal with those things today, but historically speaking, quite important. And yeah, it broke Ethereum. And that's just a screenshot of the website. So they are still around, they still exist. You can still trade them, you can still buy and sell them and breed them too. When the hype was really, really big, I think there were Cryptokitties sold for above $50,000. I don't think you can get that much today, but yeah, it was a huge hype back then at least. So a bit more about the tech, because the Superbase NFT standard of the ERC-721 is, as I said, it's a mapping basically, but then there's other information, right? So if you own one specific kitty, then this has a different look to another one. So what does it look like? What is the kitty's name? And maybe other properties. This is additional information pertaining directly to your specific kitty. And this has to be stored somewhere. So where can this be stored? It can be stored on-chain, it can be stored off-chain with, for example, a link to an off-chain storage being stored on-chain, different solutions. When do you want to choose what? That depends on the use case specifically and what you want to do with those. Let's go on with the history. 2018 then, after everybody in the scene knew about NFTs, there was lots of boring stuff, if you ask me. There were lots of hot potato schemes. So basically, things were hot just because they were unique or rare. And people bought things that were completely pointless and not even fun, most of them, just because they thought they can sell it on for even more. And a lot of the time they could. So a lot of people made money, but then at some point, somebody is the last holder who paid the most for this thing and nobody else would buy it. And so then that's why it's called a hot potato scheme. That last person is left with a hot potato in their hands that nobody's buying now and they lost some money. But yeah, this happened, of course, as well. And then more interesting things happened too, though. we can call those layer 2. And examples for that is, again, I'm just sticking with the Cryptokitties for an example, hats or other accessoires for your kitty, bracelets or whatever, and a racing game where you can put your kitties up against other people's and race them and bet money on those too, if you like to do that. The interesting thing about this, and this is why it's called a layer 2, is that these things were not made by the people who made Cryptokitties, but because it was completely standardized by then using the ERC 721. And of course, Ethereum is an open platform and everybody can interact with that and program on it. Completely different people were just able to create hats and other accessoires. Those people had nothing to do with the original Cryptokitty creators and were able to trade with these as well. And yet again, different people, I think there were different people, it might have been the same, to be honest, I'm not quite sure, created this racing game. So it shows again how amazing the standardization is, because you just do something unique and somebody else comes up with a brilliant idea what to do with this, something that the creator of the first thing didn't even think of, and now the other person can just do it. There's nothing in the way, you can just do it. By this time already, 2018, there were hundreds of millions of US dollars invested in NFT startups and NFT projects, and also raised in ICOs. So this was the beginning when this took off, but very much within the scene, of course. And yeah, I think the whole cryptocurrency scene is just now, it's still in the early beginnings of going mainstream. So there's lots of growth left to do, and with NFTs much more so, because they are even fresher, even younger than the cryptocurrency thing is in general. Here we can see the same kitty with a hat, with a, don't even know what that thing's called in English, and with a bracelet. And yeah, this is an example of different people creating, again, unique or half unique assets. So non-fungible assets, because this hat might be unique as well, right? So that is a combination of one NFT with another NFT made by different people that you can just throw together. And this is the example of the kitty race. As I said, it's a racing game, basically, where your kitty can compete against other people's kitties, and there is a bit of a betting in this if you're up for that. Of course, if not, then you just play without betting. But yeah, it's again a cool example. Somebody just made these kitties, and somebody else just makes a game out of that. That's just cool, and it shows the possibilities. So then from 2018 onward, as I said, this was the year when NFTs, at least within the crypto scene, really exploded. Then we got digital art and platforms for digital art. And this is a brilliant use case for NFTs, really. And more and more artists are doing music tracks, for example, as NFTs. Photographers are using NFTs to represent their photos digitally and so on, which is just super convenient to use. And if you, the tech is getting easier to use by the day, right? So for a lot of people that are more or less just photographers, and by this I mean no disrespect, I just mean they are not super technical people, they are photographers, right? They're not programmers, that's all I'm saying. But it's that usable by now that more and more photographers really use the NFT platforms and the NFT technology to represent their images and be super safe from fraud or from their images being stolen and used on other platforms without royalties being paid, stuff like that. Trading card games then came about. Stuff like in the offline world, Magic the Gathering, I think yeah, some of you might have heard that, maybe from your children. Maybe you played that yourself when you were younger. Stuff like this, of course, exists digitally as well. And that is another use case of the NFTs. And yeah, that was also the year when really the ecosystem around those really started to develop. The tools started to develop, which is necessary for less technical people to be able to use these things. And to use them conveniently, and yeah, have fun with that, or security, as mentioned with the example of images, or also music tracks. Another use case, digital worlds, also started in 2018. This is, you might remember, maybe that's been quite a while ago. This was called Second Life. Just like a digital world where you could own a piece of land, you could own a building, and companies even build like virtual showrooms in that. So a car company would go onto this gaming platform, onto this virtual reality platform, and have a virtual showroom there where you can just walk around, and in some cases you could even just buy things, like initiate a buying of, for example, a car in this digital world. And these things then moved over to NFTs, or not necessarily moved over, but new worlds were created. Examples are Decentraland and Cryptoboxes, where the different land parcels are represented by NFTs on the blockchain. So you can really have digital land ownership in these worlds and just sell your virtual land as easily. And that's the cool thing, that it's a token, right? You can just sell your digital land as easily as you can transfer any regular token just out of your wallet. Bam, done. No problem whatsoever. Super convenient. And there cannot be any disputes about ownership because it's a completely technical solution. You don't need any lawyers or whatever for that. Whoever owns this NFT, obviously, and beyond any shadow of a doubt, 100% sure, owns the asset. Digital mostly can be physical too, that is represented by this NFT. And yeah, this is an example of a digital piece of land with a digital building on it. This piece of land is owned by somebody. So a thing that actually also happens that you could also do, you go into these digital worlds, you buy a piece of land and you develop it, like you build a building on this. This means you just use your time to create something, and then you can sell it on. And this, what you see on screen here, is a digital museum. So all the images, all the pictures that you see in here are also NFTs, as is the land that this digital museum is built on. And yeah, these pieces of art, again, they are unique, or I think these are actually unique, not semi-unique, and can be sold and have a very clear owner and so on. And yeah, are just as conveniently usable as all kinds of tokens are. Then we spread out a bit into the non-blockchain digital world, and a decentralized naming service came about, the ENS, which is the Ethereum naming service. An example is the address vitalik.eth. Doesn't work on all browsers, of course, but it does exist. And they also started working on connection of domain name services to the blockchain using NFTs, so that, for example, just an example, the domain names marketpeak.com or peakdefi.com can be represented, the ownership of those can be represented by a token, and whoever owns the token then absolutely provably and secure owns the domain. So this has been started to being worked on in 2018 as well, or maybe a bit later, 2019. Event tickets, as mentioned before, are a big thing for that as well, and loads of other things. So yeah, 2018 was the year it exploded. And let me wrap this up with, just as I like to wrap up quite a few different topics actually, just imagine the possibilities that come out of all of these things, out of the standard. Yeah, really, sky is the limit with these, and 2021 will be the year where NFTs come more into the public eye of those, at the very least, of those that are already somewhat in the cryptocurrency scene at all. This year, there is no way that you're in crypto at all and don't notice anything about NFTs. This is going to be the next really big thing in the space. And with this, I am done with the presentation. Now we can get to the Q&A. Feel free to ask about other topics as well. Please don't ask support questions though, because this is not supposed to be a support call. And I will now have a look into the chat and see what kind of questions you might have had, if any. All right, doesn't seem to be anything here yet. Okay, I give you a few more minutes. I just wait around here for a moment to see if any other questions might come up. Do feel free to ask technical or half technical questions that are not directly related to NFTs as well. That is completely fine. Do feel also free to give suggestions for topics that you're interested in, because these webinars are for you, right, the viewers. So if there's something that you really care about, that you want to learn more about, then put it in the chat and we might just do that next time. We will see. Yeah, so we have one question now. Can a piece of music be an NFT? And the answer is yes, and that also already exists. So that is a use case that is already live, basically. And yeah, it's making the rounds, particularly for smaller artists, independent artists that are not on any big or medium labels. They like this, of course. So yeah, that is not only possible, but it's also live already and growing as well. By the way, for the German viewers here, if this was maybe a bit tricky to follow because it was in English, next week, Tuesday, we will do the NFT thing in German as well. As I said, I am not answering any support questions here, because if I start doing that, then this won't ever stop. And oh, you mean webinars in Italian? I can't do that myself. I'm sorry about that, because I only speak English and German. I am not sure if we have a technical Italian speaker. I don't really know. I don't really know. I myself can't do it. I'm English and German only. Sorry about that. All right. Doesn't seem to be any more questions. So yeah, thank you for watching. And if you haven't already, I'm getting used to saying this now. Why don't you click this bell button? Why don't you follow this channel? And in any case, check out our other videos and content on the channel. There's lots of educational stuff that is partly interesting, partly good to know, can't hurt in any case. And of course, there's even more educational stuff on the Market Peak platform itself. And with that, I wish you a good evening. See you again next week. And bye-bye. Have a good one.